know you were under the weather last week, so hopefully you're feeling a lot better now, and I appreciate you hopping on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and feeling a lot better. So let's talk some Jets football, baby.
Oh, the Jets always make everything better, as we know. Well, actually, we'll start with some news this morning. So the Jets still need a backup quarterback. A name that we were told was seriously under consideration was Carson Wentz. Well, officially, that is not happening. Carson Wentz, according to multiple reports, is re-signing with the Minnesota Vikings. So Wentz off the board. You look at that Vikings QB room. They got Kyler, J.J. McCarthy, and Carson Wentz. You wonder, where do the Jets go from here? This also comes a day after we learned Andy Dalton, another name that many thought could be the Jet backup, was traded to the Eagles. So, Matt, you get the first word on this. What are your thoughts on the options at backup quarterback now for the Jets?
Yeah, Carson Wentz was a name that was kind of brought up earlier in the process, and I wasn't a super huge fan of bringing in Carson Wentz just because he seems like a very polarizing figure, right? And I just don't love that from a QB2. I kind of just rather someone who comes in and does their job kind of a thing. I thought Dalton would make a ton of sense. I would have loved to trade a 7th-round pick for Andy Dalton to be the backup, just reliable, goes about his business type of dude. But, now looking at it, I don't think there's a ton of great options. Tyrod Taylor, I guess, could come back, who I've always liked Tyrod as a backup. The issue is the injuries, right? It feels like anytime he comes in, he unfortunately gets hurt shortly thereafter. And I know another name mentioned previously for the Jets was Cooper Rush. So I wonder if that's kind of where they loop back to. Didn't have a great year backing up Lamar in Baltimore last year when he came in and started a handful of games there. But I always thought in Dallas backing up Dak Prescott, I thought anytime he got an opportunity, he looked okay in that role. So maybe that's the route that they go. I don't know if the trade market is really going to be an answer at this point.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like there's a ton of options in free agency. If they go down the trade market, I'll continue to suggest Will Levis just because I rather the backup be someone who has a possible upside. Like if they had brought in Wentz, if they had brought in Dalton, that doesn't do anything for me. I know what those guys are. There's no even illusion of them being anything more than just a backup at this stage of their career. I'd love to see the Jets take a chance on someone with some semblance of an upside. I'd call the Colts about Anthony Richardson as well. I know people think I'm nuts, but they have Frank Reich on this staff now. They have Bill Musgrave on this staff. These guys have worked with a tremendous amount of different quarterbacks in their career. He's talented. There's an upside there. I'm not saying he's any good. He probably isn't, but I at least am open to the idea of bringing in someone that we don't definitively know what they are. Because after Geno Smith, all right, if Geno gets hurt and goes down, I don't have any false illusions of the Jets doing something this upcoming year. So I'd rather take a chance on a guy with some real upside.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. And I think I would feel more comfortable with that because you have Geno and you kind of know what Geno is. If the plan was after just going through last year with Justin Fields, who similar kind of quarterback in a way to a Will Levis or an Anthony Richardson, where you're going, it didn't work out in their first stop. But the hope is that, there's enough talent there as a high-end draft pick that he could figure it out. I didn't want to go back down that road for the starting job, but I could understand the idea of taking a flyer on one of these guys for a back. And I don't think it would cost you a whole lot to trade for one of those two guys. So Levis feels like the popular name of the two. So I guess we could potentially see if they make a move there. Although, I know we talked a lot about Tanner McKee earlier in the offseason. Now, after they being Philadelphia trade for Andy Dalton, do you think that makes Tanner McKee potentially available as an option?
Yeah, I guess it could. My question is, what do the Eagles want for him? Because I don't understand where the hype comes from in the first place. He was a 6th-round pick. He's barely played. I watched him in the last game of the regular season, and I get it. The Eagles weren't playing all their starters, but I didn't see anything where I go, oh, we need Tanner McKee now. I don't understand where the hype for McKee comes from.
No, I'm totally there with you. He has 2 starts in the regular season, both in the last week of the year. One of them went really well against the Giants, and then the other one against Washington didn't go so great. So I'm with you. I don't get the love affair there if you're talking about a 2nd or 3rd round pick. If it's a day 3 pick, I just don't think that really hurts you all that much. But, supposedly they're asking a lot, but I'm with you. I don't really understand why or what value they have on him.
Matt, in terms of the other veteran options, you mentioned Tyrod before. Geno Smith made a comment, I believe, in his interview with Josina Anderson that him and Tyrod work out together in the offseason. They have a good relationship. Tyrod's been like a mentor to Geno in his career. Gun to my head, I think they just bring back Tyrod. What would be your thoughts if he ends up being the backup?
Yeah, I could definitely see that. And you know what? I like I said before, I happen to really like Tyrod Taylor. The injuries are a slight concern, but if the Jets end up drafting somebody at some point, it doesn't have to be Tai Simpson, but it could in the first round or second round theoretically. But it wouldn't shock me if they went into 2026 with a room of Geno, Tyrod, and a rookie quarterback. I think, he's well respected in that building. He's been here for the last couple of years. He's been solid in his role. So I could see that. Absolutely.
Your thoughts on the debate at quarterback now? Mel Kiper mocking Tai Simpson to the New York Jets in his latest mock draft at pick 16. Give me your thoughts on the idea of the Jets taking Tai.
I don't love it at pick 16. I'm going to be honest with you. Now, a part of me would get it from the Jets perspective, right? Where maybe they're looking at it and going, well, if we go through, 4-13 this year, are we going to ever get a chance to draft our guy? But I really look at it and think that at the top of the draft, they got to add a difference maker on this defense. And then at pick 16, like I'd really rather a wide receiver, honestly. And I think with Geno and having the veteran in there, it kind of, can bridge the gap for you from this year into next year. I would rather take a shot on one of the mid-round guys, honestly. Garrett Nussmeier, Drew Aller, I feel like are the two names that are talked about the most for the Jets in the middle of the draft. I just would have a really hard time using that pick 16 on Tai Simpson. Now, if it works, then great. You found your franchise quarterback, and you can't, obviously overdraft a franchise quarterback, but it would make me nervous going into the season. I'm not going to lie to you.
Tai Simpson has so many things that you really like about him. I think his personality, his processing skills, toughness. I just can't get over the fact he played 15 career games. And it's not like he was dominant in his 15 career games. He was great at the beginning of the year, dealt with some injuries. Alabama didn't do a ton to really help him with a running game, and they had a ton of drops in that receiving room. You could talk yourself into it, but I just don't think, given where the Jets are at with the 3-1s they have next year and what is in all likelihood going to be a way better QB draft, I don't know if you could justify taking him at 16. It's way too big of a risk. And they don't need, like, Mougey does not need to take that swing. No one's expecting him to have to get his quarterback figured out long-term this offseason. They're set up to do it a year from now. Unless you love him, I don't know if you could justify taking that type of risk.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on it. And that's why, like, if I was in the chair, I personally wouldn't do it. The only thing again, like how I laid it out before for Mougey and Aaron Glenn, like a part of me could understand it if they just they feel like they can't afford to wait another year to go after that guy. But for me personally, I'd rather build out the roster. I think they've done some nice things in free agency, both with signings and trades. And I think, with 4 picks in the top 44, like, you can continue to add to this team and set yourself up for the long term. And I just think it's too big of a gamble.
But Dylan, let's get into a mock draft from Daniel Jeremiah, because I think it's fascinating on really a number of different levels here. We'll skip pick 1 because we all know who's going 1 in the mock draft. It's basically like the free space on a bingo card. It's like, here you go, fill out your mock draft. Fernando Mendoza is going to go number 1. And then the Jets are on the clock at number 2. And with the second pick in Jeremiah's mock draft, the New York Jets select Arvell Reese, linebacker / edge from the Ohio State. Jeremiah writes, I go back and forth between Reese and Texas Tech's David Bailey here. Reese, with the experience playing on the line and off the ball, gives the Jets more scheme flexibility in their 3-4 defense. I have become pro Reese. I like Bailey. I just think Reese gives you the opportunity to maybe swing for that superstar you're looking for at pick 2, the first non-QB in the draft, the best non-QB in this draft. I think he's a perfect fit for their defense. I love the fact that you have some veterans that the Jets have added to help mentor Arvell Reese. I trust Carl Dunbar, the D-line coach, to put Reese in the best position in his development. So I'm all for drafting Reese at 2. What say you?
I think this, first of all, if you're trying to be predictively correct in your mock draft, Daniel Jeremiah would probably get all of the points because it seems like this is working towards being the heavy favorite for the pick. For me, I think there's probably about 6 names you can invoke for me at 2 where I would understand and like get on board with the thought process. And that's Reese, Bailey, the 2 that Daniel Jeremiah is on the fence about, Ruben Bain, the third edge from Miami. Carnell Tate at number 2 is fine for me in terms of talent. Mekhi Lemon in terms of talent, I think is fine at 2. I know a lot of people would push back on that the most. And then Sonny Styles is another one for me. So there's 6 players right there, and you're not even including Caleb Downs. So there's really like 6.5, 7 players where they're in the mix at number 2. But I do think Arvell Reese is pulling away with this. The talent is pretty, self-explanatory. He's only 20 years old, so that ceiling that he's going towards is not even, close to being completed. Whereas, maybe a David Bailey or Ruben Bain, and understand more of what they're going to give you over the long term of their career. Arvell Reese has so much more projection involved with him, which makes it hard for a lot of people in the draft business. But if you think you can unlock that potential, like you said, with a Carl Dunbar and all the other, coaching additions that they've made on this team, even Bowling from Houston being the linebackers coach, because he's going to play off the ball next to DeMario in some capacity, maybe only 15%. I think this is one of the best choices they can make as a non-quarterback. And I will go back to what Robbie said a lot in his episode, fighting for Reese against Bailey with Frankie V. And I'm not saying, I'm so out on David Bailey, but I think Robbie made a lot of good points. And then the graphic he shared showing all the different fronts and potential things that they could do with their front 7, including Arvell Reese in that picture, including a 4-2-5 where you keep your edge rushers like Osai and Will McDonald on the field, and you have Briggs and whoever it is standing next to him in the middle at DT. And then you have DeMario Davis and Arvell Reese as your 2 linebackers, and Jamie and Sherwood's not on the field. And it's like, okay, you can really, kind of understand the vision. And I would say I want him to be an 85% edge rusher, 15% off-ball linebacker in year 1, maybe even skewed more towards edge rushing duty specifically until he like really hones in on that craft. But I can't fault them for thinking that they have the ability to unlock that potential. Will they? We don't know. But if there's anything about this coaching staff, including the head coach, Aaron Glenn, like we know that they're going to bet on themselves to get the most out of whoever it is, including Justin Fields.
Had to bring up Justin Fields. Had to do it. With that, I want to kind of dive deep into the picks after Reese is off the board at 2, because I think it really kind of gives you an idea how one of the more respected draft analysts kind of sees the board. So the Jets make their pick at 2, and if you follow along in the mock, at 3, we get our first potential surprise. Francis Mauigoa comes off the board here, DT. He goes to the Cardinals, which pushes now Jeremiah Love down to number 4 to the Tennessee Titans, which is a fascinating pick if Bob Saleh adds that level of playmaker with his offense with Cam Ward there. Number 5, Sonny Styles comes off the board, a name that we've discussed potentially going at number 2 to the Jets. Number 6 is Carnell Tate. Keep track of the receivers, because obviously that is something that we're all going to be considering with the Jets' next first-round pick at 16. At pick 7, Ruben Bain Jr. goes to the Commanders. And I bring this up because Jeremiah has David Bailey falling all the way to number 8. We've been debating Bailey versus Reese, and here's Daniel Jeremiah, who has Bailey falling all the way to 8. And I find it interesting because in his blurb about the Jets, he says, I go back and forth between Reese and David Bailey here, yet he has Bailey falling all the way to number 8. So what do you make of that?
Yeah, and I also think it also adds another layer of the potential intel he's getting about the New York Jets plans specifically, because if he is focusing on edge rusher and he is split between Arvell Reese and David Bailey, that's signaling that he thinks there's a specific scheme perspective that they're going at with this number 2 pick. And maybe Ruben Bain is the odd man out, because why wouldn't Ruben Bain be also in the consideration for number 2 for DJ? And then to have him go above David Bailey, who would be the, quote unquote scheme fit over Bain, which I think Bain would work completely fine in this Jets defensive front. But it is interesting. We did the mock draft exercise, me, Kev, Dom, and Nick on Shine's channel. I had the Cardinals take Maui Noah at 3, and I didn't know DJ's mock at the time. And then at 7, I had the Commanders, and I took Bailey. I don't remember if Bane was on the board or not. I don't think he was. But it's like it kind of points in a direction where if David Bailey doesn't go at 2, does he fall all the way to a 7 or an 8? And to the point about Jeremiah Love, real quick, I remember coming on the show in like November and like joking about the Jets. You know, you have to muster up some interest in Tai Simpson at 2 or Dante Moore at 2, even if you don't want him, to get somebody to trade up over the Cardinals who are going to need a quarterback. And that might happen with Jeremiah Love. And maybe the Cardinals don't take Jeremiah Love, but the Titans and the Giants are kind of fighting each other right now for Jeremiah Love. So can they trade out of 2 and have somebody like the Titans or Giants come up, and then you still get your blue chip defensive player, which would probably be David Bailey at that point? But it is interesting to see how far Bailey slides if he doesn't go at 2.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to see, what his floor is, what his ceiling is. I guess his ceiling would be 2 to the Jets, but I just found it interesting that he wrote in the blurb, hey, I'm between this player and that player, and the player he doesn't pick, he has fallen all the way down to number 8 for what it's worth. As we keep going through the mock draft here, I found some other DJ picks to be notable as well, DT. At pick number 9, the Chiefs take Spencer Fano. Fano, I think, is actually a name to watch for the Jets at 16. I haven't heard anyone talk about this. I've heard from some people that they view him more as a guard than a tackle, and I wonder if the Will Campbell experience with New England last year will maybe scare some teams off, that if a guy's a in-betweener, maybe he falls a little bit. If Fano made it to 16, and let's say some of the receivers aren't there, keep a note of that, Jet fans. I don't think it's totally out of the question. He'd be the best player available on their board, and they would take him. But in this mock draft, he goes number 9. Caleb Downs goes 10. I bring this up because a lot of people are talking about that 7 to 10 range for the Jets. If they were to move up for a player, many people assume it'd be a receiver. But Downs is there at 10. Any chance the Jets fall in love with a guy like him, or maybe it is one of these receivers and they're trying to move up to get him?
I mean, I think it's a reasonable range because I've said that about the wide receiver position as well. 16 and 44 on the point scale, and obviously it's not an exact science, but the Rich Hill trade chart says that 16 and 44 can get you all the way up to 7 in terms of point value. Now, maybe you have to throw in a day 3 pick to win over the person trying to trade out from 7 all the way down to 16 in the Commanders. But if that's what it takes and you want to hone in on somebody like a wide receiver, or more specifically a Caleb Downs, I don't know if I love the team building process of trading up for a safety, but I do understand trying to come away with as many players that you believe to be a blue chip, sure thing, first round talent, which in this class, ESPN only has 10 of them after Dante Moore goes back to school. So if you don't think there's more than 11 or 12 first round grades and you're sitting there at 16 and you don't want to quote unquote reach for a guy like a Tai Simpson or a Denzel Boston or whoever it is, then yeah, trading up and getting a guy that you feel is a blue chip, foundational piece of your offense or defense is certainly a smart move in my opinion, because you have so many holes on this roster that sacrificing maybe one additional draft pick is not going to really burst the bubble in terms of roster building when you want to go get what you deem to be a blue chip safety.
Hit the like button if you're just tuning in. Comments, questions, your super chats. They, of course, cut the line. You see the Dolphins at 11. I thought they'd be in play to potentially take a wide receiver here after they traded Jalen Waddle. But Mansour Delane, the corner from LSU, he goes here to Miami at 11. At 12, back-to-back corners. It is a very talented corner class. Jermod McCoy from Tennessee. He is the selection here at 12 to Dallas. 13, sorry, Jet fans, Mekhi Lemon to the Rams. You could see this being just a home run selection for Sean McVay and company. He's off the board. So if you're keeping track, DT, that's now 2 receivers that have gone in the first 13 picks.
There's more.
Pick 14, Jordan Tyson is gone. So the big 3 receivers, this is why I brought up potentially moving up. The big 3 receivers, or at least the 3 we've talked the most about until, little teaser, today. The big 3 receivers are gone. Tyson goes to the Ravens at 14. Number 15 is Akeem Mesidor. the defensive end from the U of Miami. So now the New York Jets are on the clock, and everyone's asking, what is Darren Mougey going to do? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you right now, the pick is in. Jeremiah has the New York Jets drafting wide receiver Omar Cooper Jr. from Indiana University. He writes, Cooper would be an awesome complement to veteran receiver Garrett Wilson. The former Hoosier is a tough pass catcher who could play inside and outside. What is this, Kyle Clifton, inside or outside? That said, DT, Omar Cooper Jr., for those who watched Fernando Mendoza this year, you saw this guy make a ton of plays. He's the one who had that incredible catch against Penn State in the back of the end zone. He's clearly a supremely talented dude, but it does kind of feel like he is skyrocketing up draft boards, because I remember we had conversations about him being in play at 33 or 44 for the Jets. And here is Jeremiah, one of the more respected analysts in the business, mocking him at 16. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I joked yesterday. Omar Cooper Jr. is the Kyle Clifton of Garrett Wilson's. He plays the inside and the outside. He gives you special teams upside as well. I just started diving back into his tape because I did the early season tape study on guys like Fernando Mendoza, and that's at the time when Surratt was, highly, favored over an Omar Cooper Jr. And meanwhile, he quietly ends the season with 15 passing touchdowns, and it felt like maybe going into the national championship game was when the lights kind of came on and like Omar Cooper started ascending past Elijah Surratt. And then we got through the combine process and Omar Cooper runs a 4.42. And I'm not saying 40 speed is the only thing they love about him, but he is now firmly a first round pick. And Elijah Surratt is maybe a fringe top 50 pick at best. I feel like he's not even in consideration when I'm on the clock in mock drafts for the Jets at 33 or 44, who pretty much need a wide receiver with one of those two picks, if not both, honestly. So I like the pick of Omar Cooper Jr. I just got into the Oregon tape, which is they played him twice. So I wanted to see how he played them in the regular season and then in the college football playoffs and see how he might have bounced back after a bad performance. And I'm halfway through the first game and I like a lot of what I saw already. He's a solid mover, really explosive at 6 foot, 199, 201 pounds, depending on where you look. I think the true combine measurement was 199, but some sites have him a little over 200. Explosive is all hell. Like I said, he ran a 4.42, 37-inch vertical. And I put on the Oregon tape from regular season, and he immediately wins on a red zone corner route, and Fernando has to bail out of the pocket. He probably could have hung in there and threw the ball. But Omar Cooper Jr. immediately got open. And yes, Elijah Surratt gets open, don't get me wrong, but it's a lot of comebacks and hitch routes on the boundary and back shoulder fades and things like that where, it's just one-on-one. I see it before the snap and I'm just going to predetermine and throw it if I'm Fernando Mendoza. I think Omar Cooper does a little bit more of the dirty work for Indiana. And 15 touchdowns, he certainly is the productive wide receiver as well. So I'm cool with it. I don't know if I personally, I'm trying to figure out where I draw the line of, okay, do I take wide receiver 4 or do I take Tai Simpson or do I take Vangelione, who was also on the board at this selection, right? I think about those horizontal big board comparisons and, okay, is it worth taking wide receiver 4 over potentially guard 1 and Vangelione from Penn State, right? You said Spencer Fano's in the mix, and I certainly agree with that. Dom C even said he could play center. So there's a lot of things that can come into play at 16, but I don't know where the line is. But in terms of talent and the player, I like Omar Cooper Jr. a lot. And people, I think, are putting him higher than Jordan Tyson. I think Connor Rogers did in his most recent wide receiver rankings. And, I think that should turn on some lights for Jets fans to be like, hey, this might actually be the pick at 16, and we should probably lean into it a little bit.
Hey, here's the deal. Just got no chance unless you click on that like button. And you got to make sure you subscribe to the Jake Asman Show. You don't, you can get the f*** out. Now let's go, Asmaniacs. We're built for this shit.